Rise up in the morning beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Welcome to Burnin Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy.
Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Good morning. It is, what is today? It is Tuesday, June 9th. Boy, it's coming on fast here. June 9th, and I got a pretty good show for you. We got Screwworm back, and it's spreading. It's not a big deal yet, but it could turn into a big deal. But there's some of the response that has got me kind of questioning where our leadership is headed. So we got the flesh-eating parasite back inside the U.S. border. The guy that's heading the response and being the public face for the government is called a Texas cattleman, but really he's a meat packing power broker. These GPS collars that the government has been pushing, while they might be really awesome, it could be just another tool for the government to surveil your ranch. And then the board doesn't believe what the sale barns are telling us. We'll keep our war reel pretty tight, and we'll dig into the screwworm, what it means for cattle in the markets, and we'll talk about some virtual fencing, and then we'll end it out with on this day in history. So this was all the research done for June 8th, but the A's decided to go in the 12th inning last night, and I watched it, and then they didn't get done till 11:20, and I wasn't ready to record. I mean, I had everything ready, but at that point, it was too late, even for me. So here we are, bright and early. We'll start it out right where everybody pays attention to every day, and that's the board. Before we get going too far, though, make sure you go like and subscribe on all the platforms, whether you listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can find a podcast. I'm on that. Probably even overseas. I had a ton of international downloads yesterday. I had like 1,100 downloads from the country of Vietnam. I do have a connection to Vietnam, but I've never been there. And I know one dude from Vietnam, but that's about it. My biological dad fought over there, but I've got almost 2,000 downloads from country of Vietnam in the past 2 days. Kind of an odd one, but also bunch from Brazil, Argentina, Bangladesh, some from the Middle East. I had a truly global audience yesterday. What that means, I don't know, but welcome to everybody for tuning in. And if you don't speak English, ni hao, or that's not how they say it in Vietnam. I don't know if that's how they say it in China. I know it's not how they say it in the Middle East. Actually, I don't know that, but I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure about that. Anyways, all that to say, the most important place you can go find and support the show is Substack. So it's burnindaylight.substack.com. And if you sign up over there, you get access to ad-free episodes, minus the sale barn reads, which I don't have at the moment. And then also you get access to all the apps that I'm working on, including the Burnin Daylight Report dashboard, which I use to put this show together. It's one of the tools. that I use to put this together. And the Man About a Horse app, which is my equine intelligence app, trying to put a definition on the various horse markets around the country. Subscribe over there. That's the best way to support the show. And I'm a big fan of the platform Substack. If you like finding various media, if you like independent journalism, that's a good place to go. So anyway, burnindaylight.substack.com. Support me over there if you feel so inclined. All right, so on the board, front month live cattle have been trading around 250, while the feeders are sitting in the mid 350s. Meanwhile, the cash market is still stout. The latest 5 area weighted average has live steers around 256, a little over 256. I think it was like 256.80 something, and the heifers right there with them. So the cash is carrying the premium to the screen in a lot of the country. Box beef is still cruising right along. Choice cutouts sitting at roughly 392, 393. Selects at 383, so you got about a $10 positive spread on that choice select spread. The middle meats are doing the work. There's still plenty of value coming out of the box to justify the cash cattle, even if the futures have had a little bit of case of the yips. Out on the sale barn side, let me pull up my sale barn monitor. Callaway Livestock there in Missouri. That was yesterday. They sold 3,403 head, averaging 489.19 a hundredweight. Let's see some other big runs. Clarinda Livestock over in Iowa. That was last week at 1,611 heads, 450.27 per hundredweight. And then Bloomfield Livestock there in Iowa, that was last Thursday. That was 1,376 head, bringing 355.92. That must have been a lot of heavier cattle. 909 pound average on that. Farmington Regional Livestock there in Missouri on Thursday as well. 1,473 head, 557 average, brought 453.26. On that Clarinda, they were 637 average, bringing 450.27. So still some pretty light runs overall because there's just not a lot of cattle out there. But you're seeing 5 and 6 weights still well into the $500s, $500 per hundredweight. Ogallala and Fort Pierre 6 and 7 weights are in the 430s to 480s, depending on the type and the condition. Lighter 3 and 4 weight calves are pushing 550, 570, and even better in some barns, particularly in like the Nebraska, Dakota area. The feeder board says mid 350s, and the barn is paying like folks with grass and yard space still have some powder dry. Hogs are softer. Lean hogs futures have been backing up. We're talking, what are we at? What they close out at yesterday? They're running at like 96.15 right now. So mid 90s in June, upper 90s on July contract with the USDA's base hog price hovering in that mid 90 range. It's not a full blown wreck, but it's not really a party over there either. And I don't know much about what I'm talking about on the hog side, so we'll just leave it at that. On the grains, corn is hanging in there in that low $4 area. Call it $4.15 to $4.20 for July. Beans around $11.20 on the July contract after shedding more than 60 cents over the past 6 weeks or so. Wheat's coming in about $6.20. There's a big South American crop, soft export demand, and everyone's trying to figure it out if the U.S. balance sheet is really as loose as the board acts like it is. And the big one that affects everybody and everything, it's diesel. So National On-Highway diesel closed out. Where is it showing at? So for the week, last week is $5.35 a gallon. That's down. We'll get a new number out today, but AAA average is showing at $5.31 a gallon. So Still haven't priced in some of that Hormuz shock from the latest round of not ceasefire, but still a ceasefire. Who knows? We'll get into that later. So we're down a little bit from last week, but we're still running a 50% over a year ago. And so repeat that. It wasn't cheap a year ago, but we're 50% above that now. EIA keeps nudging 2026 projections into the high $4 and mid $5 range. So that's your feed, hay, trucking, and every mile that you're running cattle to the barn, and everything that you buy that you don't directly produce right there at home. It's got to get to you on a truck or a ship, and that means diesel. So I've been kind of trying to look at all this stuff from the lens of the Austrian School of Economics, which is, like the libertarian economics. So the gap between the board and the barn kind of makes sense. The barn is full of people bidding their own money based on actual grass feed and diesel bills, and the board is where you price not just the cattle and the corn, but the policy risk goes in there. The Screwworm headline gets baked in, the interest rate chatter, and then the fund flows. So when Screwworm hits the news, the futures puked and then calmed back down. Cash barns never blinked. They've been pricing tight cattle numbers and the beef demand this whole time. So that's why I say that the cash market is the real market, because it's real dollars being exchanged by real people for real cattle, and it's not just an algorithm trading it, and it's not the California Education Association or any of these other big pension funds that are people that don't actually know what a cow is. All right. So Screwworm is the lead story for obvious reasons. And even though I covered it pretty extensively there on Thursday, and I've got a note to make about that. Let me find the article here. I posted about it on my Instagram yesterday. Let's see if I can find the article that I was looking at, because can I get some of that beef checkoff money to help educate people? Because I did more than the beef quality assurance did, and quicker, and it was something you could actually see. They're talking about how the beef quality assurance has a whole new this whole new dashboard of posters and stuff that they can in English and Spanish, and then you click on it and the link is broken. And so that's super neat, guys. That's swell. That's your $1 a head tax, sometimes more, that you put on, that gets put on every sale of every live head of cattle that changes hands. Let me find that article real quick, because let's see if it's still broken. It was from yesterday, I know. Okay, I think this is it. Maybe that was from High Plains Journal, not the Fence Post. I think it was. Here we go. Beef Checkoff develops new world screwworm resources. I'll pop that up on the screen for you real quick. But just maybe it'll work and they'll make a liar out of me, but I posted receipts yesterday. So here we go. If you look up on the screen here, producers are encouraged to visit bqa.org/screwworm/producer to access and download identification resources and on-farm posters in both English and Spanish. The webpage also provides links to treatment information and additional information resources from the USDA. So this is reporting from the High Plains Journal. Oops, looks like we need to round up a stray. The page you're looking for can't be found. Whoopsie. And yeah, it's can I get some of that money? And I'll do a better job than this, I promise. I already did a better job than that. Not to toot my own horn, but that's yeah. Anyhow, so we'll talk about the bug and what the guy that DC put in charge of it to fix it. So, New World Screwworm is not a social media buzzword. Again, it's a fly whose larva literally eats on the live animal from the inside out. If you don't catch it in time, they will kill it. So typically the eggs get laid in the navel or a branding wound or open cut. And then pretty soon you've got a calf or a deer or a dog full of maggots that if you're not watching close. USDA first confirmed this outbreak in a 3-week-old calf in Zavala County, South Texas. Since then, we've added at least one more calf in LaSalle County, Texas, and dogs in Andrews County and Lee County over in the oil patch. So it's not just hugging the Rio Grande anymore. These flies have gotten a lot farther north and west than anybody wanted to see. They've thrown the full federal kit at it. There's a 20-kilometer control zone. What are we getting all European all of a sudden? Like we got this new fly, and we can't just stick with miles. No, it's a 20-kilometer control zone around the case. We got movement controls, inspections, stepped up surveillance, and a sterile fly program, dropping roughly 100 million sterile screwworm flies every week in Mexico and along the border to knock down any local population before it can really establish. USDA and CDC are very clear on one point that screwworm is an animal health and economic wreck, but it is not your typical grocery store food safety risk. Anything nasty enough to be alive in a carcass gets caught at inspection. The real danger is the live cattle, all your livestock and wildlife. Excuse me. There was like 11 home runs hit in that game last night between the two teams, and I was screaming a lot. It was a fun, exciting game. A's took the loss, but in the 12th inning, it was all right. It was all right. Anyway, my voice is a little bit shot this morning. So the real danger is livestock and wildlife, and the people out there that have to take care of those animals that get infected and watching for bad smells and blowflies. So even with just a handful of confirmed animals, the dollar sign numbers are big. Expert numbers floating around put this at a multi-billion-dollar potential loss if the screwworm really establishes. And one analysis said Texas alone could be looking at something like $1.8 billion in damage if the bug gets a serious foothold in the herd. Canada is not waiting around. They've slapped a temporary ban on all livestock that either originate from Texas or have been in Texas in the last 21 days. Cattle, horses, the whole thing. While still admitting that Canada itself is screwworm free and promising to adjust measures as necessary. That's a cute story, Canada. That's not getting up that way. It's too damn cold up there for that. But that's politics for we're going to overreact now and then sort out the details later. So right now we've got a fairly localized biological problem and a handful of confirmed cases and a much larger policy and trade problem as other governments and agencies start treating anything with a Texas brand like a biohazard. So from from my perspective, the people closest to the cattle, that's the ranchers, the order buyers, and country vets, bear most of the real risk there. So that means lost calves, extra doctoring, sale barn buyers flinching at South Texas in the sale report, and the people writing the rules in D.C. and then now in Ottawa to bear almost none of that direct risk, but they pull big levers. So the borders get opened or shut. They label something a hot zone, which trucks didn't get held, or which trucks get held at an entry port, and prices are trying to carry that information. Cash cattle in the sale barn are still pricing tight cattle numbers and beef demand. The futures board is pricing policy risk in the headlines. The maggots haven't killed enough. I don't think they've killed any calves here yet, but they haven't killed enough to justify a panic on the tape. But the board is really trying to handicap is how stupid are the government's going to get with this. And it's not a great sign to start with, tell you the truth. Who did they put in charge? So that's I'm behind on one slide here, but all right. So let's. In charge of this whole response is the USDA Screwworm czar, or whatever they senior advisor for the New World Screwworm Preparedness. He's introduced as a Texas cattleman and a food safety entrepreneur. I did some digging into this guy. His name is John Bellinger. And this was he was appointed by President Trump himself. And I did some looking, and all of his bios, nothing about him says cattleman at all. He has owned some cattle, probably from the feedlot to the plant, but he is essentially a power broker for the meat industry. He's not a cow-calf guy. He's not a stocker guy, and he may have fed some cattle out, but from what I can tell, he's a packer guy. That's it. He co-founded and ran Food Safety Net Services, which is a big food testing and audit lab network that grew to dozens of labs and hundreds of employees. He is the founding partner and CEO of Texas Western Beef, which is a packing outfit, and he built Agro West International, a meat export company. He's also the former chairman of the U.S. Meat Export Federation and the Southwest Meat Association. He has served on the Texas Beef Council, and he's got ownership or board ties in branded beef and food ventures like Nolan Ryan Beef, BK Beef, BC Stables, AW Japan, and others. His degrees from Texas, he's got degrees from Texas A&M. He's a big Texas A&M guy, but his degrees are in ag education and animal science. And his early claim to fame is meat judging and not livestock judging. So even though the same animal is involved, the cattle and beef are not the same product. And that's where the big disconnect in a lot of this whole thing comes from. And particularly when you're talking about checkoff dollars, because those all come from the cattle buyer, the cattle raiser, the cattle buyer, the sale barn. Every time a live animal changes hands, that's where the beef checkoff dollars come from. But those dollars are used to promote beef, not cattle, beef. So the producer is subsidizing the packer who's already making plenty of money. And as you can see, pop this up again. Where's that page at? There we are. Your beef checkoff dollars are doing a world of good here, because, as I've said before, the the screwworm deal is not a beef problem. It is a livestock problem. And they keep stressing that it's not a food safety problem, but it's kind of strange optics. If it's not a food safety problem, why do you put a food safety guy to lead the response of it, not a cattle guy? Like if it's not a food safety deal, who are you trying to settle down with this latest appointment? And that would be the export markets. And this is just another case of Trump not listening to the base here. But I'm sure he's got a lot of Packer money speaking in his ear, because they tend to throw that around. Not at the cattle producer, but they'll throw it to DC on the regular. So when USDA calls him a Texas cattleman, what they really mean is a meat packing, export, and lab executive with a Texas address. Like, I've worked cattle in Texas, so I'm more of a Texas cattleman than this guy is, I think. I don't know. Maybe he comes from a ranching background, but everything that I can find doesn't show that. Does that mean he doesn't know fat cattle? I'm sure he knows fat cattle. He's a beef packer guy. They do know how to read fat cattle, but that does not make you a cattleman. So, like I said, he may well own some cattle there, but his power base and his Rolodex and his priorities are the packers, the exporters, and lab clients, and they're not cow-calf outfits that are doctoring screwworms in Zavala County. So, again, in the same breath, USDA and CDC tell you that the screwworm is not a consumer food safety problem, and it's not. It's an animal health and economic problem. So, if it's not about E. coli on a burger, why is the public face of the response a food testing and meat exporter Hall of Famer instead of somebody who knows bugs and has been elbow deep in this thing for 30 years, or a working producer from the impact zone, or I don't know, how about a state vet or something? I'm surprised. I guess Anthony Fauci's not in office anymore. But like, I don't know. This one doesn't make sense for me. But if you zoom out, it's kind of exactly what you'd expect. The concentrated interests, which are the big packers, the export customers, biosecurity contractors, get a seat at the table, while a guy who speaks their language. The dispersed interests, which are small and mid-sized outfits that need some sane rules and timely help, gets whatever left after the trade optics are managed. So, and it's all not all that unsurprising after we just had China renew a bunch of permits for packing plants. Now they're trying to get out ahead of this thing and make sure we don't screw up selling beef to China and Japan. But what does that mean for the guy on the ground that actually has to do with this? This guy probably doesn't like you already. Like, historically shows they probably don't like you. Texas is a little different case, because they're not a big fan of the cash trade down in the Texas and New Mexico region. 97% of the trade is on the formula market, and then those packers, they use the futures board to their greatest impact, and to be able to lowball on the cash prices, which then sets the basis for the benchmark for how they price in their formula and their grid pricing. So anyway, as you can tell, I'm not a real big fan of this move, but I could be proven wrong. Maybe he's the right guy for the job, but it's, like I said, the optics don't look good. And also, what the hell does this guy know about screwworm that makes him right for the job? I don't think it does, but I could be wrong. So I'll withhold judgment, but I'm raising the alarm now because this one stinks to me. Much like the blowfly and screwworm infestation, that stinks. Putting this guy at the top of the response, being the public face of it, that also stinks to me. So I I hope I'm proven wrong. I'll say that. We'll do a quick war reel here before we move on into some of the other stuff we got, but we'll keep it tight. So on the global front, the main foreign policy issue hitting your outfit today is through energy, sanctions, shipping risk, and a whole lot of patchwork of climate policy and subsidies over the top. And that's why your diesel's at $5.35 instead of $3-something. And that's why the fertilizer and freight are where they're at. So you're not buying fuel from a free market. You're buying it from through a policy jungle. So every time you hear about another escalation overseas, looking at you, Israel and Iran, or another climate target here at home, understand there's a straight line from those headlines to what you pay for when you run a feed truck. So on the war note, the ceasefire is again dead. Trump is he says that Netanyahu's not in charge. Trumpy Bear's in charge, and then Israel went ahead and bombed Lebanon instead, and then Iran bombed Israel in response. And so we've got that whole mess that Donald Trump should have never waded into is still a mess, bigger mess now than it was when we started. If you remember, before we started, the Strait of Hormuz was wide open, and now it's shut for going on. That's over 100 days now. So that whole thing's a mess. That was a mistake by Donald Trump, and I don't see an easy way out of it going forward. All right, let's talk about some domestic ag. And so this is, well, I don't have a ton of personal experience. I have applied to work for some of these virtual fencing companies. No luck yet, and I'm starting to kind of be glad about that. All right, so let's talk about some quieter forms of control that don't come with tanks and missiles, but they hit just as hard over time. So on the virtual fencing deal here in Nevada and across the West, universities and conservation outfits are running pilot programs with the GPS collars and base stations. So how it works is you draw your fences on a map instead of string and wire. One base station runs you about $10,000. And then you're paying a subscription, roughly $40 to $60 per head per year. So call it $50 a year for every animal that you put it on. And depending on the system, for the privilege of zapping your own cows when they cross the digital line. And as a tool, it's pretty cool. You can protect riparian areas. You can steer your cattle off of heavy fuels for. You can steer your cattle towards the heavy fuels for wildfire and get that knocked down. And you can rotate your cattle around in a sandhills type grazing system without having to move physical fence. Folks at the University of Nevada, Reno, and Noble pilots will tell you there are some real labor savings and range benefit when it works. But that same collar and base station are telemetry devices. So every step those cattle take, every time they hit a virtual fence, every hour they spend in a creek bottom, that's all getting logged on someone's server. And in a lot of cases, these conservation and NRCS programs, that also ends up in a government database, and some of it may even be subject to FOIA if you're on federal land. FOIA being the Federal Information Act. So academic work is already flagging the data privacy as one of the biggest concerns slowing adoption, and that's with good reason. There's no clear national framework on who owns that grazing and movement data, who can access it, who can resell it, and how it can be used in enforcement or litigation. And meanwhile, NRCS is out there offering cost share through equip and targeted implementation plans for virtual fence projects with batching deadlines and ranking criteria just like any other program. So the incentives are pretty simple. The vendor gets a subscription revenue and a gold mine of behavior data. The agency gets detailed evidence of whether you stayed out of the creek or whether you followed the grazing plan. And you get some flexibility and labor savings plus a long-term liability if that data becomes the stick used to enforce fines, cancel permits, or tighten your grazing rules a little more every year. So be aware of all this. And that's what I mean by soft control. First, they subsidize the collar, and then they own the map of everywhere your cows ever walked. And once the regulators see your herd patterns in real time, the temptation to nudge you with subsidies or voluntary standards and threats of noncompliance is baked in. The real asset isn't just the cow; it's the behavioral data set, and that proves the behavioral data set that proves how you use your land. And right now, that ledger is being written by somebody in somebody else's server room. The same pattern, Colorado River, years of subsidized canals and use it or lose it rules let people pretend that the river was bigger than it is. Now inflows into Lake Powell are running around half of long-term averages, and irrigators are cutting back. Ground is going fallow, and cow numbers are being cut back because the market said too many cows. Not because the market said it, but because paperwork says no more water. Keep an eye on the greater Yellowstone area. APHIS keeps tweaking brucellosis management areas, which means more testing and paperwork if your cattle live inside that line, even if your herd has never had a positive case. The map says they're risky, so the market discounts you, and your cost to move your cattle goes up. And so from the Austrian economic framework, the questions are the same across all of it. What knowledge problem is the rule ignoring? How does it mangle price signals, and how does it push people into the wrong investments? Who gets these concentrated benefits, and who eats the dispersed cost? On the Screwworm, the benefits are budgets and contracts, and the costs are ranchers dealing with quarantines and bans. On the virtual fencing side, the benefits are data and grants, and the costs are long-term control over your operation. On the water side, the benefits are protected deliveries for some, and the costs are some operations quietly liquidating cows to make the spreadsheets balance. So all of this stuff is concerning, particularly with this administration, supposedly, friendly to the rancher and the farmer, but on the same side of the coin, they're cozying up to these big data and tech companies that are potentially giving the government just unprecedented access to your operation. So keep an eye of that and be skeptical. I'm not saying don't use these things. They sound like they could be a fantastic tool, but there's a lot of risk that comes with that, particularly on the control side of things. All right, let's get you out of here on a different note. So before we close out, we'll do some on this day in history. This was all for not all. Over the weekend, we rolled past on June 6, 1944, that was D-Day, the Allied landings in Normandy. About 160,000 troops hit those beaches under fire to start the long, hard fight breaking Hitler's grip on Europe. It's a good reminder that sometimes you don't get peace and freedom by asking nicely. So that was 82 years ago on Saturday, I believe. Yeah, Saturday's was the day. Memorialized D-Day, big hat tip to anybody who served and stormed the beach there or got dropped behind enemy lines to begin the invasion of Europe. It was a pretty incredible time in history. It was the feat that they accomplished there is truly amazing, and it's one of the kind of modern mythos of the United States, as it all ties back to World War II, and that's kind of the seminal moment of World War II for the United States. All right, on June 8th, 1789, James Madison stood up in Congress and introduced amendments that became the Bill of Rights speech. So that included guns, due process, the whole package. Those were written by people who did not trust distant central government to behave itself, which is worth remembering anytime an agency tells you they just need a little bit more emergency power over your land, your water, and cattle. Think back to COVID and how that 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into about 2.5 years worth of nonsense regulation and authoritarian control. A lot of people will disagree with me on that. I still say that was very authoritarian, and Donald Trump does not get enough credit for causing all that. While he was not the worst actor of the case, he set the whole thing in motion with the declaration of an emergency. And James Madison would not have been happy with him, I don't believe. On June 8th, 1906, Teddy Roosevelt signed the Antiquities Act, giving the president the power to lock up big chunks of federal land as national monuments with the stroke of a pen. Out here in the West, a lot of grazing country, water, and mineral rights have been wrapped up under that authority ever since. Sometimes to protect something real, but most of the time is to score political points, and ranchers usually find out after the map has already changed. On June 8th, 1949, George Orwell's 1984 hit shelves in the U.S. That little book about a surveillance state where every move is tracked and every thought is policed. 70 plus years later, we're talking about GPS collars on cows and virtual fences that send your grazing patterns to a cloud. And you kind of got to just laugh and cry at the same time that Orwell's book birthday in the U.S. lands on the same date that we're talking about soft control on your cattle range. And on June 8th, 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israeli jets and torpedo boats attacked the USS Liberty, which was a U.S. naval intelligence ship in international waters off the Sinai Peninsula. 34 Americans were killed and about 171 wounded in a 2-hour assault that the official line still calls a tragic case of mistaking identity. And a lot of sailors and spooks still call something else entirely. Thomas Massey memorialized the crew of the USS Liberty on the floor of the House yesterday and called for a real investigation into this, in which has become abundantly clear over the years, particularly, I think it was in 2015, Haaretz, which is an Israeli news outlet, came across messages from Israeli aviators during that day where they clearly knew this was a U.S. ship, and the speculation around it is the plan was to sink the ship, kill all the survivors, and then blame it on Egypt so that the U.S. would enter the war on Israel's side. The Israelis were able to fight back and gain a lot of territory during that 6-day war, and it's been a thorn in the side of people here lately, and I would say rightfully so. You guys know I'm a pretty big Thomas Massey fan, and there's a lot. He's facing a lot of criticism for being anti-Semitic by bringing this up, but I don't see how it's anti-Semitic to honor fallen American troops. Kind of an America First thing, if you ask me. But on the sports note, we had a hell of a game in Las Vegas. So the A's are doing a miniature future homestand. They played last night at Las Vegas Ballpark, which is the home of the AAA affiliate, the Las Vegas Aviators. And it was a wild one. It's known as a hitter-friendly park, and it proved to be so last night. The Brewers beat the A's 15-14 in the 12th inning. 7 total home runs. Nick Kurtz had 2 bombs. Tyler Soderstrom had 2 bombs. Shea Langoliers, Zach Geloff, and Jonah Heim all joined the party. The Brewers had 5 of their own, I believe, maybe 4. Either way, I think there was 11 total home runs hit in that game. It was a wild one. Las Vegas Golden Knights have a 2-1 lead in the Stanley Cup Finals. They play Game 4 tonight. And the Spurs win Game 3 in New York. The Knicks lead that series 2-1. Spurs win 115-111. We got some pretty good matchups going in baseball today. Of course, we got the A's and the Brewers facing off there in Vegas. Dodgers going into Pittsburgh to take on the Pirates. Cleveland and New York. That was an extra inning games. New York won yesterday. That's a pretty important matchup. 2 first place teams in their divisions. The Braves at the White Sox is a fun series to watch, and Reds at the Padres. That's a pretty meaningful series. Two clubs struggling to stay relevant at the moment, and so the A's and the Brewers. Who do we got on the mound tonight? I think it's JT Ginn facing off against some schlub from Milwaukee that'll probably end up being pretty good. Milwaukee's kind of a pitching factory. Gasser's his last name. Robert Gasser, 27-year-old left-hander. Not been particularly good this year. Pretty small sample size. Facing off against JT Ginn, right-hander for the A's. That guy's got a nasty sinker. Had pitched really well, but had kind of some tough luck here lately. So hopefully he can continue his success and the offense can continue to light it up there in Vegas. But that's all I got for you today. Keep an eye out for those damn blowflies and screwworms. Keep on top of that. Be diligent, and as you guys know, I'm not a big fan of the federal government, but let them know if you find one so they can start dropping those flies and try to get that shit beat back down below Panama like we have forever. So this thing has the potential to get pretty nasty, particularly if it spreads into the southeast, where it will continue to fester in that hot, humid environment. I think maybe one of the silver linings, like I talked about up in Nebraska, not having any grass to run cattle after those fires, maybe that's a little bit of a blessing in disguise with that the Asian horn fly. And I forget what the name of that disease up there is, but pretty isolated cases there as well. But also with the southeast being in a heavy drought, maybe it's a little bit of a silver lining that they are, because possibly the screwworm won't have as easy of a time getting set up in the southeast. I don't know for sure on all of that. That is all speculation from my part, but keep an eye on it, and don't let your butt crack. This has been the Friggin Farm Ranch Report for Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. Now move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.